It's raining in Canada. And I know what you're thinking, but wait. I know it's raining in Canada, but you're indoors. Wouldn't you be safe in your fancy schmancy video creating laboratory? You don't know what it's like up here. You can't see where the hole is because it's badly lit and the lighting rig is absolute shit. But water is dripping into my laboratory and I had to use a cup because I don't have a bucket. But I'm going to do the show anyway because you know why? Because it's better than the alternative, which was scrapping the entire project. And you know what? I'm a Canadian. I'm used to this. Until it gets really, really cold. Then I have to start worrying about how I'm going to afford tinnies. Anyway, we're going to do the show. That, and I think there might be somebody who had something to do with getting all this water into the studio. It's funny how we didn't have a leak before, but when I went to look at the leak, there was bear fur everywhere. Well, it won't work because this is grizzly bear fur, and you are a brown bear. Ah, you didn't think of that, did ya? Get off. Anyway, we're gonna do the show. Brace yourselves, everybody. This could be damp. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Dragonus Podcastus. I am your host, Dead Ponic. I am back. I'm feeling a lot better. However, the inverse effect has unfortunately happened to Lady Byron. She is suffering from a headache, so I'm going to let her head rest, lest she has a even worse headache. But before we get started, we are actually approaching our 20th episode. Yay. It's going to be a doozy, don't worry. Anyway, Lady Byron, would you like to tell our audience what we are talking about today?
Today's topic is werewolves. Yay!
Yay! I love werewolves.
They're
Now,
great.
yeah, now, the last two episodes were about undead monsters, but now we're doing something that's not really undead, so, that's kind of a departure from our theme here, but anyway, we know these beasts as men or women who transform under the full moon into ravenous beasts with an insatiable bloodlust, and they can either walk like a human or run like an animal, and this condition is often known as lycanthropy. And we often call these beasts lycans, or we just call them werewolves, because werewolves are the most common thing that appear throughout fantasy and media and all that. Now, to really actually understand what and how one contracts lycanthropy, we have to know exactly what it does. So, when a victim contracts lycanthropy through a myriad of ways, they don't immediately turn into a werewolf right away. It actually takes a bit to actually show up, but the first few signs that you're going to possibly transform is that you have a very unusual hunger for raw meat, and some in some media, there's sometimes if you're like scratched or bit, sometimes fur will show up around the wound, but it's not always the case. That's just one iteration. And sometimes, um, the morning after the night of the first transformation, it often leaves the victim very confused and possibly naked, because the transformation tends to rip up their clothes. There may be literal blood on their hands, and they could either interpret this as they got really drunk and that they somehow ended up naked with blood on their hands, or something really weird happened. It's usually the second time that the victim realizes something isn't right when they start their transformation. It's a very painful transformation. Why it's the full moon, I personally don't know. that could just be something that was just part of the myth. But because this is connected to wolves, wolves actually, they howl at the moon to actually communicate with each other, which is actually something I just looked up in preparation for this, which I find very fascinating because I really like wolves. Anyway, um, when a newborn werewolf, it's often said that a newborn werewolf's first howl at the moon is the most significant point in their life, as it represents the transformation into man beast. And then the morning after, they realize that they are a monster, and they have to find a cure for this, or they can fully embrace it and learn to work with it. And this is where the community that they live in discovers the truth. They become vigilant and they set up a night watch, or worse, they hire a hunter to track the beast. Usually one of three outcomes happens. Outcome one, the victim is often killed to prevent another transformation and more people from being killed. The second outcome is the ones on duty on the night watch that night of the full moon either see the beast killing a person or see something zooming around the area around the town and consider that to be the beast or a beast of some kind, and then the whole town panics, paranoia ensues, and absolute chaos follows after that. Outcome 3, where they hire the hunter manages to track down the werewolf. They either sympathize with them and possibly relocate them, or they're just cold-hearted and they put the lycan out of their misery, collect the fee they charge, and then move on to the next job. If that happens, well, you're not gonna last long. Have you ever seen that show, Manhunter?
Oh, I haven't.
Yeah, it's two people. They're really good at, like, I think it's called Man Tracker or Manhunter or something like that. And like you have a group of people, they're trying to get to a specific place, and the two man trackers are trying to track them and capture them, which is really cool. I haven't seen it in a while. I think they took it off the air, but it was a really cool show back then. That's basically what the hunter would be operating under, except they have a crossbow or they have some kind of weapon to deal with the lycan. And speaking of weapons, a common theme with these last two episodes is that the monsters have a weakness to silver. Well, vampires specifically have a weakness to silver. Zombies don't. However, lycans are actually the first monster to actually have this weakness. I don't know how it was discovered. This one's a bit out of my knowledge base, but something about the silver, it doesn't cause their bodies to immolate, but it does cause them to rapidly die. I think it has something to do with the curse or something about the silver, or it could be that it's just a blessed object and the lycan takes great pains to get away from that, as far away from that as possible. And in some iterations, like what we see in the third Harry Potter film, as Hermione explains, beasts, or which is the common term, when transformed, they will not harm other animals that they consider friendly unless they are attacked by that animal, and they will not harm others of their specific were type or were variation unless fully consumed by bloodlust or they're desperate for something. And as Hermione says also, they don't realize that they can't separate like friend from foe, and they will often kill. They sometimes will kill their best friend if he gets in their way, which is unfortunate. So, and then there's several ways also to contract lycanthropy, and the most common two are either a bite or a scratch on the arm near the hand, or a curse. I believe there's a spell that acts like a curse where you can actually inflict somebody with lycanthropy. I don't know for sure though. And then there's you can also be naturally born with the curse via being an offspring of someone who is a werewolf. You also can a cursed artifact, like if you actually Like, I remember in one story, a person accidentally cut themselves on a like a claw, and they ended up getting lycanthropy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you can also find scratch marks on the torso that sometimes ends up having contracting lycanthropy. I don't know if this is true or not. The druid animal form, like they can when they take the form of an animal. I don't know if druids can take on the form of a werewolf, but it's one possibility. And I don't think it's ever been explored. And then you've got polymorphing. That's the same idea with the druid thing, but and I don't know how that works. But if someone were to try that, I would imagine that they would be afflicted with the lycanthropy, unless they're transforming into a wolf or a variation of a werebeast that's not afflicted with lycanthropy. Um, Probably the most telling thing about a werebeast is their capabilities. So they are as a not canine, but more a quadruped, depending on the variant. They have inhuman speed. They have enhanced smell that comes from usually for a werewolf it's enhanced smell because a wolf has enhanced smell. They have enhanced strength. They get natural weapons, so their claws and their teeth, and depending on the variant, you can even have tusks, which is scary. They have a pounce ability, and they have a minor stealth capability. Although some werewolves often forego this because they're bloodthirsty and they don't really care about sneaking up on their prey. Um, they get damage immunities. They get bludgeoning, piercing, slashing, and non-magical weapon damage immunity. So there's not a lot that can actually hurt them, unless you cast a spell that makes them susceptible to this. And they also can communicate with animals, depending on the variation. And this is only possible um, in were form only, unless you're a druid, obviously. And also, this is the weird part of the video that I just realized. There are several variations. Obviously, there's the werewolf, but there is the werebear, the were-rabbit. Actually, speaking of were-rabbit, have you ever seen Wallace and Gromit?
Uh, did I lose you?
Oh no, you just cut out there a little bit. Have you ever seen have you ever seen Wallace and Gromit?
I've seen a little bit of it.
Okay, so Wallace and Gromit, The Curse of the Were-Rabbit. So, well, in that case, Wallace actually does a brain transfer thing. That's how he ends up getting uh being turned into a were-rabbit. But it's the same idea, um, same concept. But though for some reason the were-rabbit has a insatiable hunger for vegetables rather than blood or meat, which makes kind of makes sense because rabbits are often herbivores, so it kind of makes sense that they would go after plants or vegetables. And oh man, that the were rabbit is it's 10 feet tall, and whenever it howls at the moon, all rabbits around it will do this. Will howl at it. It's like a master of all rabbits, which is really cool actually. Although in real life, I don't think rabbits actually eat carrots. Although I could be
That's
wrong.
right.
I'm
They
sorry.
don't eat carrots.
Ah.
They're too sweet.
Oh, okay. That makes so okay. Which is funny because yesterday I actually saw 3 rabbits in the backyard, and it was like I really want to like chop up some carrots and give them some carrots. But then I realized, oh yeah, that's just a thing because of Bugs Bunny. But
Yep.
I do think, do rabbits eat lettuce?
Yeah, they eat lots of leafy greens. They like to also chew on things that are a bit harder because their teeth continue to grow, kind of like a beaver. So they need to keep their teeth kind of in check.
Ah, yes. Speaking of beavers, there is the beaver. That's kind of I actually made that up. But
Well,
yeah,
any creature can contract lycanthropy. Obviously, animals are the most common, and werewolves are
yeah.
the most common among them. But werebeaver, not outside the realm of possibility. It's a fantasy curse. It can affect anyone.
It's lycanthropy is very fascinating, and the various depictions are actually something I'm actually very interested in. I think the most common, from what I know of, is probably Harry Potter and some other like fantasy media. But the other one I just remembered was Underworld. Although I have not seen that movie in a long time, I know that the werewolf, or lycans as they call it in the movie, that's like they're prominent throughout that series.
They are. And we
Um,
had
hmm.
we had media like Supernatural that had werewolves in it. We had movies such as Werewolf in London, The Wolfman. We've had lots of movies and books and things about werewolves.
And it's very fascinating, the mythology behind it. And also I think there's another variation. I don't Although don't quote me on this, but um the Wendigo, or
Mm.
I think the Wendigo is usually cannibalistic, and it is usually kind of covered in hair, or it can be like incredibly emaciated. And then you also got like the frost version of a no, that's a yeti, and that's something else.
So, fun fact, the wolves depicted in the Twilight series are not werewolves. While they technically were cursed, they took the shape of wolves, but they didn't transform only during the full moon. They could transform any time. So they were shapeshifters with the preference of a wolf form, not werewolves.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Hmm.
Um, Speaking of Twilight, I got a quick question since we were on a bit of a theme here. Okay, have you actually seen all the Twilight movies? Because I'm kind of confused about most of them.
I have.
Okay, does does Edward bite Bella and she turn into a vampire?
No. Oh, sorry. Edward is the vampire. Yes.
So is it because she was on the verge of dying and the only way to save her life was to basically turn her into a vampire?
Yes.
Okay, now that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so
But
yeah,
maybe we can take apart Twilight series in another video. But yeah, no werewolves or were creatures were featured in that movie.
I did not know they were not, well, werewolves. And then
Hmm.
I do remember like Jacob, he could like turn into a werewolf at will, and I was like, why? There's
Hmm.
no full moon. It's like the middle of day. It's like, oh, oh, okay, so he's not really a werewolf.
Hmm.
And also, okay, there's the Thriller music video, like the beginning part
Uh-huh.
where like Michael Jackson's turning into like the beast. I think that's he's supposed to be a lycan in that situation, though he takes on the form of a feline in some capacity. That still gives me nightmares.
Yeah, some things can be, scarier than others.
Although in the second part of the video, he takes on the form of a zombie. Although that's the best part of the video, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
I actually really like that video quite a bit. Um, like yeah, as you said, like all manner of creatures can contract lycanthropy, and they can often pass it on. Though any creature with the ability to fly, if they were to infect a human, would that human still, when they transform into that werebeast that has flight, would they be able to fly, or would they have to be stay grounded?
I guess it depends on the nature of the curse. If the flying creature who's cursed, is his flight part of the curse or part of his anatomy? Because while the curse does change, the lycanthropy does change a creature's anatomy in a small way, being able to transform from a humanoid person into a wolf, it doesn't give them wings normally. But that's not to say that it could be a special variant of lycanthropy curse where maybe you do get wings.
Yeah, and there's also the thing where isn't the transformation like super painful?
Mm. So we see this represented in like American Werewolf in London, where it shows him transforming for the first time, and it's anguishing. It's so painful. And also in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, they showed um, some of their characters turning into werewolves, uh, not being a fun experience.
Yeah. And also, like, the transformation often ends up ripping up their clothes, and
Hmm.
they end up being naked, which is not a, it's quite awkward the night after.
Yeah.
And I remember an episode of Charmed, like the original Charmed, where Piper gets turned into a Wendigo, but she's covered in fur in that version, and when they try to destroy the actual Wendigo, um, they use a flare gun, and because apparently werewolves have they have fear of fire for some reason. I don't know. I think that's just an animal's instinct to run away from flame, but
Uh-huh.
um, they figured out they have to decide which Wendigo is Piper and which one is the real one, and they shoot at at the wrong one, and it turns out Piper in inadvertently uses her power to freeze stuff. Now that again, like that's a variation. So I would imagine that she retains her powers, but it's like kind of like a she does it like completely on accident kind of thing. And that's how they
Uh-huh.
were. And that's how they were to beat the Wendigo. Now, as for now, if you were to destroy the original carrier of the curse when you are infected, does that mean your lycanthropy goes away, or do you still have to get like a cleric or a priest to remove curse on you?
Depends. It depends on the mythology. In Supernatural, I think they talked about how if you could kill the sire, as it were, or track down the sire in some way, you could potentially cure the person that was turned by the sire. But it's highly dependent on the stories that they're trying to tell, the mythologies, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I that's the thing about werewolves. They have and werebeasts in particular, they have like so many different interpretations, and they're all very fascinating. And go from there's even like in one video game called Killer Instinct, there's a werewolf-esque character who's been enhanced with cybernetic technology, and he's basically been driven mad because he's been trying to find a cure for his lycanthropy, but he ends up going deeper and deeper into madness and fully embracing the beast. It's kind of like the Hulk syndrome, as I like to call it, where you're constantly fighting that animal instinct.
Uh-huh.
Do you accept it and maybe embrace it fully, or do you work out something where you can call upon it in times of need, or do you kind of reject it, and every time you transform, you kind of you're like you have like this look in your eyes. You're like, I'm sorry for what I'm about to what I I can't stop this kind of thing. Which reminds me, I know there's a like in Harry Potter in the books they talk about what's known as the Wolfsbane potion, which is basically it renders a werewolf basically harmless when they transform under the light of a full moon. So when every time Lupin would transform on the night of a full moon, he would be basically he curl up in his office and he'd be basically harmless. He wouldn't attack anybody. But the night that you find out that Sirius is actually innocent, and you find out about Peter Pettigrew, that's the night he didn't take his potion, and that's where he transforms and he is about to attack everybody. And it's going off on a bit of a tangent. I like to point out that I don't think Lupin intentionally tried to infect Snape in the movie, at least when Snape stands in front of the three kids. I think he was just doing it because, as Hermione said, if he gets in his way, he's gonna attack him. Which that puts that gives like moral fiber points to Snape in his corner for me, because he's, despite the fact that he hates Harry and possibly Ron and Hermione, he's still a teacher and he's still a good person and he still protects them. I really like that. Anyway, any other things that you've dug up over the years about werewolves?
Oh, in Dungeons and Dragons, it's kind of fascinating. If your character gets bit by a werewolf, then there's a save that the character can make. If you fail, then you have contracted the curse. Remove curse is typically used to amend this condition, but sometimes it's not enough. If the GM wants the curse to have some staying power or wants to make it a little bit harder to get rid of it, then maybe that spell remove curse doesn't work. And then, and like you mentioned, the blood frenzy, a lot of GMs will run it where if the character contracts lycanthropy and then a full moon comes, they lose control of their character, they transform into a beast, and they attack who's ever nearby. And most likely that's their friends and party members. So it's definitely something that a player would not want to run into. And I find that werewolves are a fun enemy to run against the party if they know what they are.
Yeah, and well, werewolves generally are, well, in their in their human form, they're usually like loners because they want to protect everybody around them. Um, which reminds me of something. Have you ever played World of Warcraft?
I have not.
Okay, so it's an MMO. It's one of the most popular MMOs out there. But there's a race called the Worgen, which is basically you're playing a werewolf. As you play through the story of it, you get scratched on the hand, and eventually you turn into a Worgen, and then you have to come to peace with the fact that you are a monster for the first little bit, and then you actually find a way to actually go back and forth between your Worgen form and your human form. That I just remembered that, and I thought that was really cool. There's other actually no, I don't think that would be a no, because he doesn't transform. He's just permanently like that. Anyway, any final thoughts before we wrap up? Do you want to quickly tell our audience what we're going to be doing for the next episode?
I think we should leave the next episode as a surprise.
Ah,
Tune in
yeah.
to find out.
Yes, I agree with that. Anyway, oh, before I go, I got to do this. Oh, I don't know why. I know why wolves howl at the moon, but I always found wolf howling to be quite fascinating. And if I'm not mistaken, since dogs are like not derived, but they come from the same species as wolves, dogs howl at the moon sometimes too, or they bark at the moon.
Yeah, they do.
Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. We will be here next week. And hopefully I will be able, and hopefully Lady Byron her headache is gone by then. But I'm feeling a lot better, and just anyway, don't let the werewolves bite. Anyway, see you guys later.